Hello, I'm Jack. This week I'm joined by Harry. It's Saturday, and this is the Football Natter. So, Harry, what are we going to talk about this week?
So we're going to be talking about Bournemouth and Watford and their excellent start to this Premier League campaign. We're also going to be talking about the relegation battle and the title race. And finally, we'll wrap it up with previews for this upcoming Premier League week.
So, I think we start with Bournemouth. I think to fifth in the Premier League now, they are on an absolute amazing run of form. And if you look at the key players which they've brought in, and you look at the prices which they've paid for these players, I mean, they've had Callum Wilson since they were in the Championship. They bought him from Coventry. They've had David Brooks, who they bought for £10 million from Sheffield United last season. He is brilliant. And if you look at the Fulham game from the weekend, and the way he played, because he kind of plays just off Callum Wilson, and so we can get behind him, he can drop deep to support Lerma, another good signing, 25 million, which in this kind of day and age is absolutely incredible value. And I think it just kind of goes to show that you don't need to spend millions and millions of pounds to get a good player which is going to help your team. So Manchester United, they paid 89 million for Pogba. Yes, it's a lot of money, but I'm not comparing Brooks to Pogba, but 89 million is a lot of money when. And Dele Alli's another example. £5.5 million for Dele Alli, and Tottenham have nurtured him, and he's now such a vital player in England, in the England squad, in the Premier League, in the Champions League now.
And I was going to say, it's like Pochettino, he's been such a massive part of Dele Alli's, development as a player. I think it's the same with Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe is the centre of all of Bournemouth's success. They've gone from League One to now Premier League regulars almost. This is their, I think, fourth season third or fourth season in the Premier League. And like with Brooks, I hadn't heard of him before this season, and he's come through and he's doing brilliantly. You got other players like Cook. He came out of nowhere really, and he's been brilliant. So Eddie Howe has been so important to their development this season, especially.
I think moving on to Eddie Howe, when you sort of see management positions at higher clubs, and you might obviously have that at Tottenham, maybe with the kind of the rumour that Mauricio Pochettino might go to Real Madrid, and you kind of think, well, should Eddie Howe be considered for a position like Tottenham manager? Kind of a young English. Well, he's young, I think I heard he's only been in management. He's been in management for a decade already. Eddie Howe is one of the youngest managers ever. Should he be considered for a kind of a management role at a top Premier League club?
I think yes. I think he's starting to really prove himself now. Ninth in the Premier League last season. What an achievement that! I think that's brilliant, really. And this season, if he can, come top 10 again, if he shows consistency, he's raising players to the next level, just like Pochettino is doing. If he goes to Real Madrid and the vacancy opens up, yeah, I mean, why not? Just see where it goes with him. I think he's definitely got the talent and he's got the managerial experience to go on and do that now.
And I think the potential of what Bournemouth can do. And, Eddie Howe, I think I saw maybe a year ago an interview with the BBC, and he kind of said, he'd always got in the back of the mind that he might leave, but it has to be the right choice for him and his family and Bournemouth. And I think he's not going to leave easy. I think still to him, he feels that Bournemouth is very much a project where he's got a big part to play in. And sixth in the table, 1 point off Tottenham, 2 points off fourth. The fairy tale kind of really does continue.
Yeah, and Bournemouth have really got to be looking at it this season. Manchester United, they're in a bit of a mess, frankly. And it's possible that, Man U will turn it around. It's not out of the question. But they've got to be looking. And yes, it's early days, but they've got to be thinking, can we really push for 7th and maybe even 6th place this season?
Well, I think you often see teams finishing 7th and 8th in Premier League getting UEFA Europa League qualifying games. I think West Ham did a couple of years ago. Everton have had them in the past. And I think if Bournemouth get to the stage where they get Europa League qualifiers, I don't think any Bournemouth fan 5 years ago would have said, "Oh yeah, we'll be challenging for the Europa League in 5 years' time." I think you would have called them an idiot. You would have shouted them down.
Mm.
It's been an incredible journey, and that journey continues. But on to Watford, and Harry, you've kind of been looking into Watford a bit more.
Have. So, Watford, what a start to their campaign. 10 games, 6 wins. I didn't see that coming. Manager Javi Gracia, he's got them playing incredibly balanced style, in my opinion. Great attacking players. You know, you've got De La Feu, Roberto Pereira, Andre Gray on his day can be a really deadly striker with his pace. And, yeah, they've got those playing, but also really good defence with Kabasele. I'm sure you've seen a lot of him. He's a really good defender. I think he's one for the future also. I think you could see him move to a big club. So they're maintaining a really strong balance there. And personally, I thought they were more of a relegation candidate this year. I didn't see them doing anything. And that is really down to their inconsistency since they've been in the Premier League. It's just, can they keep that going?
Well, I think. I keep saying, well, I think if you kind of look at Watford over the past few years in the Premier League, they've always kind of finished 10th, 12th, 13th. They've had a great start. If you look at a couple of years ago when they had a Garlo and Deeney, before Christmas, they were absolutely on fire. Garlo was getting linked to Arsenal in the January transfer window, and Tottenham. And it kind of, after Christmas, it just kind of died off. And last year as well, they had, obviously, Richarlison, and I don't think he got a goal. He got one, two, 3 goals after Christmas. So it's going to be interesting to see. And the test for Watford will be to continue their form post-Christmas, because if I think they do, like Bournemouth, they will be challenging for kind of 8th, 7th position, which will be the highest in the Premier League for a number of years. And a great job done by Javi Garcia.
So yeah, talk about Javi Gracia and like his key players. See, I don't think their team has changed massively from last year. I really don't. I think the foundations are still there. Obviously, they bought De La Feu rather than his loan that he had last season. But let's look at some of those key players then. So Roberto Pereira, incredible midfielder. On his day, he is a massive danger. So Pereira's coming with 5 goals, but he's a midfielder. In the first 10 games, 1 goal for every 2. You got to be thinking, what a performance. And, you know, his attacking flair and his style has been absolutely incredible. It's been absolutely incredible for them. They're doing brilliant stuff. And De La Feu, you know, he's bringing the flair, he's bringing the style, he's bringing the kind of skills that are needed for a strong and unpredictable attack, which Watford are going to really need to survive in the Premier League.
I think, going on to De La Feu there, the Premier League's kind of very used to De La Feu. I think a few years ago he was at Everton. Yeah. He did really well there, linking up with Lukaku, and then he kind of went back to Barcelona. He went on loan spells elsewhere. Then he came back on loan to Watford. Then he went back to Barcelona, and now he's back at Watford. Yeah. So he's used to the Premier League, and I think now we're kind of starting to see the best of him. I think the reason maybe why he didn't make it at Barcelona was because he was a little bit too inconsistent. And when you're at such a big club, although the league, some of the teams in the league can be seen, I don't know, easy, but to be that best player, you've got to be consistent. And I think he's hoping that he can find that consistency at Watford.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, both of those players, Pereira and De La Feu, have come from very, very brilliant clubs, Barcelona and Juventus, so Europe's best. And how much do they cost? Just 13 million. That's such a bargain. You know, going back to Pogba, he was 89 million, and I'm not comparing, but, you know, it just shows a real kind of void there between the two. And then Abdoulaye Doucouré, I think for me, he is starting to become a really well-rounded player. On the back of a great season last season, he's got 4 assists, and he's just been so important to their style of play. He can hold a really strong defence in front of his centre-backs, but he can also produce a lot attacking-wise. He can score out of nothing as well, may I add. He's scored some worldies over the last 2 seasons. I really enjoy watching him play. And again, he was only £8 million from Rennes. So he's starting to become quite established, and I think he could be a possible transfer target in January.
Established was the word I was going to use. what Decore offers is something which he's very athletic, but he's physical, and he's kind of positioning on the pitch is so vital to the way Watford play because they've got the pace with the Andre Gray and De La Feu to go forward and the kind of the playmaker role that Pereira, I think, and Will Hughes as well. What can they the kind of the way that Decore complements the kind of the whole attack for Watford with Pereira, I think is really going to set them in good stead for the end of the season. And like you say, in terms of January, I think it wouldn't be stupid to say that clubs like Tottenham, like maybe I'd see maybe not Chelsea, but clubs like Tottenham or even Manchester United might look at someone because obviously Nemanja Matic is getting old now and they're kind of looking for maybe somebody that can come in and replace him. I think Decore would not be a half bad option.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. But, the thing is with Watford, kind of in summary here, is it is all about consistency. Are they going to be like that season where they were knocking about mid-table the whole season and finished 17th? Because that was a real disappointment for them. Is this going to be the manager who sticks around for longer than 2 seconds? Is this going to be their season?
On to the relegation battle. Now, for me, there are 5 teams, and I think everybody kind of realises these 5 teams that really are at risk of going down. Obviously, last season we had Southampton, who only just escaped the drop, thanks to Mark Hughes coming in. But I don't see them getting any better than what they did last season. I think they've tried to bring in Danny Ings to help that. But whether he stays fit, and if he can stay fit the whole season, then they've certainly got a chance. But selling players like Tadic and kind of expecting, when you bring in Elyounoussi, to kind of expect him to step up, I think that's maybe a big ask. Newcastle, I think they've been quite surprising for me because obviously they had Kennedy on loan from January last season and he really made a big impact and they've kind of brought him on loan for the whole season this season, try to replicate the effect he had after Christmas. But they've been quite a surprise for me because I didn't think they bought too badly. Obviously they shipped Gale out on loan to West Brom, who's now tearing up the Championship, and kind of brought in Rondon in the opposite way, and that is the kind of striker which Newcastle kind of are known to have with obviously Andy Carroll and Cisse in the past. But they have been quite surprised for me, and I think it's not right to say that Rafa Benitez should be sacked.
No.
But he's got to do something because Mike Ashley, as controversial as his ownership of Newcastle is, Benitez has got to step up and kind of show his kind of real management skill. Cardiff's another one, I think. Obviously, as soon as they came into the Premier League, they were unexpected to get into the Premier League in the first place, and so nobody kind of really rates their chances of staying up. Neil Warnock's obviously always over enthusiastic about how his team's chances, but we'll see with that. And Huddersfield, they just don't have the goal scorer in them, and I think we saw with Middlesbrough a few years ago, when you don't have a goal scorer, you don't have a chance of staying up because there's no way you're gonna get 38 0-0 draws. And Fulham. Now, Fulham obviously the biggest spenders for a newly promoted club ever, over £100 million on new transfers, and everybody, they started all right, and everybody thought, this will kind of be the way they are for the whole season. But I think when you look at the Arsenal game, the performance against the Arsenal game, I know Arsenal are in brilliant form at the minute, but they completely tore them apart, and they kind of had no defence at all.
Yeah. So I'll start with Fulham then, leading on from that, and that Arsenal game where they really capitulated, and since then I think they're kind of struggling to get back on their feet. Over £100 million, and may I add on players who are frankly really good. Schürrle.
On paper, yeah.
Schürrle has been decent so far, even in a struggling team. I think Mitrovic had, moments of brilliance and needs to get a bit more consistent. He had this issue with Newcastle. You saw a player who could actually be quite good, but he wasn't doing it enough on a regular basis. I don't know with Fulham. I feel that they could go down. They are that team like Middlesbrough who spent a lot and therefore they got big expectations, but I don't know if they can live up to it. I think the manager has got them playing quite a dirty style of football almost. So I don't think he will last for very long if they continue the way they will. But they might be all right. It just depends whether they can get the style of play correct for the players they do have. Because players like Seri, he didn't belong in the Championship. I'll say that. I'll also speak about Huddersfield because I actually quite like Huddersfield, to be honest. The Terriers, are quite nice. But the thing is being nice isn't going to keep you up, is it? And Steve Mounier, I hear his name thrown around a lot, probably because he scored quite a few goals when they came into the Premier League. But he is the man who I think had to step up and score for them, and he does not. He is not scoring enough at all. And I think, again, like without a goal scorer or without a source of goals, you're going to really struggle to stay up, and their form is reflecting some issues. However, what I will say is some games they're keeping good possession. Like against Tottenham, I think they had about half of the possession, and if they can learn to work well with that, then you never know, they might be able to have a late fight.
Going on for the kind of looking for goal scorers with Huddersfield, I think when you haven't got a striker who can bang in the goals on a regular basis, which is what's needed, not only to finish anywhere, I think in the Premier League in a safe position, you need a goal scorer. And I think because obviously Mounier isn't scoring, Depoitre isn't scoring, no. they're looking behind them, and they're looking at players like Van La Parra, Pritchard, and Pritchard, who came from Norwich a few years ago, came through the academy at Tottenham. I don't think he's made as big of a step up and an impact that we would have thought he would have when he came to the Premier League. If you look at James Maddison, the person who's below Pritchard when he was at Norwich, and then when Pritchard left, Maddison stepped up into the Norwich team, and now he's stepped up so much, he's now at Leicester, and he's absolutely tearing it up at Leicester. He's been a breath of fresh air to the Premier League. He's got into the England squad. And, rightfully, he should stay there. If he keeps up his performances, he's going to be a brilliant playmaker for England in the future. And if he keeps that step up, he really does have a chance of staking the claim in Gareth Southgate's team. And what I like about James Maddison, going completely off topic from the relegation battle, but what I like about James Maddison is that he's come really from low down English football, from a product of the Coventry Academy. He was scouted by Norwich, went to them. He's been to Aberdeen on loan. So he's been a bit of everywhere, but he really knuckled down when Alex Pritchard was at Norwich and trying to push him. And when Pritchard left, it opened the door for Maddison, and he's made the step up, and he's made another step up into the Premier League, and he really is a quality playmaker.
Yeah, I love James Maddison. I really think he's going to go on to do great things for England, maybe even become a startlet in time. I really like him, I rate him, and I agree Huddersfield, if they did want someone behind the strikers to be providing the goals, someone like him would be excellent, imagine that. But moving on from Huddersfield Town, unfortunately, we're going into Cardiff. Now, I don't have too much to say about Cardiff, to be honest, because, again, as Jack said, no one really expected them to come up. But anything can happen in the Championship now. And I don't think they prepared well. I really don't. I thought they bought a lot of Championship players. Yeah, Bobby Reid was the top scorer, and I thought he was fair. But a lot of the other players they brought in, I was like, really? And then on deadline day, of course, Harry Arter. They made it sound like they sound Lionel Messi, for crying out loud. Like, he's not that player. He's not that player. He works very hard, but he's not that player who's going to, do wonders for them. I really can't see them doing much. However, they're in a bit of good form, so they might be able to scrape together some wins at the moment. It just depends. Like, I think they've got more of an attacking flair than, for example, Huddersfield, but their defence for me is quite weak. I think Morrison makes a lot of mistakes, and he's meant to be their really determined, strong, tenacious centre-back, and I don't know if he's really going to cope in the Premier League.
I think the whole plan for Cardiff coming into the Premier League was that they'd try and keep as many clean sheets as they can against the mid-table teams, try and nick a goal. And I think because it was so unexpected for them to come up, they haven't had the time to plan like Bournemouth did. So Bournemouth had one season in the Championship before they went for promotion and gained that promotion. Whereas Cardiff have brought in Neil Warnock, and they brought in good players. Danny Ward from Rotherham, Mendes Lang from Rochdale.
Tearing it up the wing.
And I think It's great for Cardiff that they've come back into the Premier League. Obviously, after the disastrous attempt last time in the Premier League when they had Malky Mackay and sacked him and all of the kind of controversy with Vincent Tan. But nobody expected them to come up. Nobody expects them to stay up. And they realised that when they came into the Premier League, well, they weren't going to win both games against any of the top six. So that's 12 games out of the question. And so it's then about looking towards the lower kind of games, like the games against Brighton or West Ham, that they kind of look to try and get a draw, and if not, win a goal, and kind of keep promotion that way. I don't think they're going to be as disastrous in the Premier League as maybe we kind of make them out to be. They're not going to be like Derby were a few years ago, but they're not going to stay up.
No, I agree. I think Cardiff are definitely someone who you look at and think long term you might be able to get some good form now, but long term, are you really gonna go out and stay up? I don't think so. Only two teams left, but Southampton first. The problem with Southampton is they're another team who just aren't getting the goals. The problem is with these bottom five teams is they're not scoring. They've not got that attacking skill to really, push to get into maybe even mid-table. And I think Redmond. Let's take Redmond, because I thought Redmond looked like a great talent about 2 seasons ago. Didn't you think? I thought Redmond looked brilliant.
Yeah.
But now he's not always starting, Redmond, and I don't think he's actually consistent at all. And then you've got Charlie Austin, who obviously on his day is really good, but he's injury prone. I think Gabbiadini is a flop. Although they should have won the League Cup against Man United those years ago. He got wrongly called offside and he would have scored a hat-trick. What a story that would have been for the Italian. But no, I don't think Gabbiadini's good at all. And they've just got a few issues there. I don't know. Like last season they struggled as well. I don't know if it's a continuation of that or if they're gonna maybe sort it out. I think out of the 5 teams who are struggling, they're probably the most likely to be all right. But they've got issues, and if they don't sort them out, you never know.
I think when you rely on goals from somebody who hasn't played for literally 1.5, 2 years, and has been injured for those 2 years in Danny Ings, you're going to struggle. And I think if you're going to bring someone like him in, as much as he was a Southampton, born and bred boy, you can't rely on that kind of player to keep you from relegation. And I think the only reason Southampton might stay up is because of the fault of Cardiff, of Huddersfield, and of Newcastle or Fulham. I think the only reason Southampton can stay up is because of nicking points late on in the season from, like we saw last season with Gabbiadini against Swansea, coming back from 1-0 down to win 2-1. I think they're the kind of games they're going to have to nick against fellow relegation candidates. St Mary's is an absolute desert for goals. There are nobody. The only goals scored at St Mary's are by the opposition, and so they've really got to take that away form and try and attack teams away from home on the counter attack, using the pace of Danny Ings, Elyounoussi, Nathan Redmond. Because I say Nathan Redmond's a good player. He's been in the England under-21 squad for many years, and obviously now, when he's gone into the kind of age category to be called to the men's squad, he's just not made that step up. He's just not made that consistent level of performance, and that's the kind of struggle for Southampton this season. They don't have the consistent players, which everybody kind of thought on paper that they might have.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, again, with Ings and Elyounoussi, who we mentioned earlier, I think the summer business wasn't enough, especially for a team who not even that long ago were challenging for Europa League football. Don't you remember those old days? Remember when they were second at the Christmas break? That was crazy. But that was a while ago now, and they're struggling to adapt. Just like the next team I'm going to speak about, that's Newcastle. Now, this is my point about Newcastle. I think now the teams who are coming up from the Championship, like Wolves, there are teams like Wolves who come up, and they come fully equipped, and maybe even better equipped than the teams already there. If you've got a lot of funding, and if you've got the right transfer approach, you can do well. But Newcastle are slipping behind these teams, and now they're kind of being left for dead. It doesn't matter if you've got Rafa Benitez for a manager, because I actually don't think he's done anything wrong. I can't, yes, they're not playing brilliantly, but I don't think it's his fault. It is the ownership, unfortunately, who hasn't invested right and he hasn't invested enough. And, even like Salomon Rondon, they brought him in. Again, it's like the Harry Arter situation. They brought him in acting like he was Cristiano Ronaldo. No, he played for West Brom and he barely scored a goal. And I just think that they're in trouble. And I don't know why they got rid of Dwight Gale either. I thought he was fine and probably did more of a contribution than Rondon will.
I think if you rely on somebody who's too busy on buying House of Fraser to fund your club from staying in the Premier League, I think you're always going to be in trouble. Mike Ashley's wanted to sell Newcastle for a year now. I think he put it up November, December last year. He put it up for sale, and I don't think. I think, like I said with Southampton, the only way they're going to survive in the Premier League will be on the fault of other teams. Now, I don't think teams like Brighton are going to kind of be down there. I think they're too good. I think Glenn Murray is somehow still scoring regular goals in the Premier League, and I think that's what other clubs like Southampton, like Newcastle, look at. They think, well, why don't we have a Glenn Murray? Why don't we have somebody that when we put it in the box, he's in the right position, he gets the right technique, and he finishes. He doesn't need more than 1 or 2 touches in the box, Glenn Murray. He's a quality finisher in front of goal. He's an established finisher. He knows how to position himself. And all it's got to do is be put on a plate for him and you will score goals.
And the other thing with Brighton, if we're talking about them, is I've got to say, they have one man in the midfield, Pascal Gross, and I think he has got the kind of playmaking mentality to really provide for Murray. And they've got other players around them who are doing a good job. They're putting in a good shift. They've got Chris Hughton, who, by the way, is another great manager in our league. And I can just see them doing really well. And, the fact that they're not even in and around the relegation battle right now is crazy to think. If you thought where they come from, Brighton, I didn't expect them to be doing so well.
If you have any comments, suggestions of what you would like to talk about, pop us an email at thefootballnatter@gmail.com. If you disagree or agree with anything we've said today, let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts. But shall we talk about the title race?
Yeah,
something a bit more exciting than the boring relegation battle.
Bit less depressing. So, title race. Right.
I think we've put it down to 3 teams, really, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. And those 3, of course. Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City. I want to speak on Chelsea first because they got Maurizio Sarri from Napoli, and I think he is the real key for their success. Sarri Bowl, he's come over, he's playing it, he's doing it well. I think he's similar to Guardiola in the fact that he's
adapted to the Premier League well.
Exactly, he's come over, he's brought in that flair, that attacking power, that formation that is going to come through and play incredibly well and break down oppositions, especially lesser oppositions. Although that's not really happening in the Europa League, beating Videoton 1-0. I think Hazard is unreal, and in my opinion, he's possibly the best winger in the world. Not even right now, just in general. I think he's brilliant for his national team as well. And you just need to look at the midfield for Chelsea. So they've got Kante. We all know he's by far the best defensive midfielder around in the world by a long stretch. It's just the shift he puts in is crazy. And then you've got Jorginho, who he came from Napoli also, and he's providing that playmaking. He does well for the national team, but even better for his club, because whenever I watch him play, he's just playing those key passes. No player can shut him down. I remember Man U trying to put a clan Natter on him, and he could do nothing.
But what about Ross Barkley? I think that's something we've got to mention.
Yeah, Ross Barkley. Wow, I mean, 15 million, and I thought that was a waste of money. I did. I saw it, and I was like, why? What's the point of that? But Ross Barkley, obviously, he had that one incredible season at Everton where he just couldn't live up to it. So he went and surprise buyers in Chelsea, and now he's playing better than he ever has in his whole career. And he's got an England call up, and he's getting assists and goals. He's playing well. He's putting passes on a plate for Hazard and all those forward players that they have. And I can see him, doing very well this season. So,
but in terms of the title race, do you think that Chelsea are going to go for more of a UEFA Europa League focus? Because I think they're going to get Champions League one way or another, because I think they're going to finish 3rd, and that's automatic Champions League. But as is 4th now, you don't have to. They've scrapped the playoff rounds now. But do you think that Chelsea are going to use the Europa League to get into the Champions League and win a trophy at the same time, and maybe go for the FA Cup or League Cup in the league, or are they going to say, well, we don't really need to win the UEFA Champions League because we're going to get UEFA Europa League, sorry, because we're going to get Champions League through Premier League qualification, and then why don't we just kind of put the UEFA Europa League to one side and let's go for the title and get Champions League that way? But I think what's good about Chelsea and what's good about the squad that Sarri's built or kind of utilised from when Conte was there is that Chelsea have got really good depth. I think the fact that Loftus-Cheek is on the bench or even left out of the squad every week, a player that went to the World Cup and did very well when he came on, to think that he's on their bench and not even starting, and to think that maybe Kovacic sometimes isn't starting because of the form of Ross Barkley and Jorginho.
World Cup finalists also.
Exactly. Do you think that maybe they can go for both?
Both.
Really?
Chelsea are a club with incredibly high expectations at all times. They're probably the most successful team of the last decade in the Premier League, I would say. I think they'll go for both. I think Europa League, they definitely have a really good chance at winning that one. You've got to look at the teams who dropped down from the Champions League, probably Tottenham, or maybe even PSV, it depends how that goes. And a few other teams could drop down and maybe cause them a headache. I don't know if they really want to win that. I expect they do, though, because, any silverware is good silverware for them, and I think that they will also push for the league. I think that they have, they have the quality and they have the tactics to win both. It's just a question, you spoke on depth, and I think that they have got brilliant depth in the midfield. I don't know about the rest of it. I think they used to, but I think they've lost a significant amount of depth. I think forwards, they're really struggling there. I think Giroud links up incredibly well with Hazard. He didn't bang goals, and I think he does a really good role there, but Morata is terrible almost all the time, and I don't think he's going to improve a whole lot. And defence, I think their defence is doing well, but I don't know about depth of defence. So, I think they can win both. It just depends on the quality of other teams dropping down and if they'll be able to tactically match them.
I mean, they've got Christensen on the bench. They've got Azpilicueta Zabacosta, who against Derby the other night was absolutely incredible. Obviously, they've got Rudiger, David Luiz, Ampadu, and I really like Ampadu. And I think, personally, it's my opinion that Ampadu is Premier League ready, and Neil Warnock said this a few months ago. Now, I think what Chelsea should have done is they should have kind of done what they did with Ampadu, a little bit like what they did with Nathan Ake. Send him out on loan to a lower Premier League team, or even a top Championship club, someone like Sheffield United. Kind of get him games, keep him playing, keep him fresh, and let him make progress that way, rather than just sitting in the Chelsea reserves, coming on an FA Cup game against Tranmere. And I think maybe trying to go for both the Premier League and the UEFA Europa League would allow them to say, well, why don't in the Europa League we play Christensen and Ampadu at centre-back? Because you're not playing against the world's elite in the Europa League, and it would give Ampadu that European football experience, which could really develop him into a top player, which, like David Brooks at Bournemouth, could mean that he goes on and kind of finds that form and kind of keeps that kind of consistent level.
So yeah, here's the thing. I agree Ampadu is brilliant and definitely one for the future, but I still think he should be playing now. I think he should be given, those starts in Europa League. I do agree with that. However, I think, in honesty, they would put Christensen ahead of him just because he's a little bit older. And it is that simple with a lot of the youngsters. They don't get given a chance because they thought, oh, they're too young, they need to wait. But I don't see a reason for him to, because for me, Christensen, this is my opinion, I don't rate Christensen. I think that he's really inconsistent. I think he makes massive mistakes frequently. And I rate Ampadu higher than him, honestly. He's playing for his international team already, and he's only just turned 18, and he's playing well. So, if they maybe do get him playing in the Europa League, again, that would just be a bonus. They could go on challenge for that, especially with some of the quality they've got up front and in midfield.
So obviously touching on youth players and kind of playing players because of their age, it kind of brings us nicely onto Manchester City, and obviously with with the kind of rise of Phil Foden, if you like, playing on the streets, football in Manchester, going into the City Academy, only 17, making his debut, now coming off the bench regularly for Manchester City. And I think that's a credit to Pep Guardiola because he hasn't rushed him into it. He's kind of steadily put him in, and he's kind of steadily integrated him with the rest of the squad. And what's great about City is that because they've got such quality players, and this is why they're always going to be... for a number of years since Sheikh Mansour took over, they've been Premier League title rivals. But I think now, under Pep Guardiola, they've entered in a completely new dimension. And because they've got such quality players like De Bruyne, who's now seems to be playing at the top of his game, young players like Phil Foden get to look at those players in training, get to look at those players on the pitch, and they can really take tips from those. And that's why I think Phil Foden's going to be a big success. Because the way Pep Guardiola is kind of managing him and coaching him, is allowing him to kind of he's allowing De Bruyne to be the mentor of Foden. And what do you think about Phil Foden?
I rate him highly. Every time I watch him play, I think, he's brilliant. He's got the kind of all-round skills for an attacking midfielder that you're looking for. And I agree. I think Guardiola probably is a good manager for him, but there's a huge problem. And that's that he's not going to get into the team with the players they've got. They've got, obviously, De Bruyne, who is sensational. They've got David Silva, and then you look at Bernardo Silva. He gets in there ahead of him. And if he's going to play that attacking midfielder / winger role, I think all three of those, and Mahrez, who, although he's been pretty good for them, pretty impressive, scored against Tottenham the other night, put in a good performance. I don't know why they bought him, because they've got a really congested squad at the moment, and for young players like Foden to develop, it's only hindering him. I don't know if that means he's going to have to leave City. I don't know if that means he's going to have to go on loan from City. But what I will say is, as a player, I think he's got great potential wherever he goes from here.
So what do you kind of rate City's title chances as? Do you think they've got a great chance, or do you think they, like Chelsea, might focus on the Europa League? Do you think Manchester City now that they've won the Premier League, now that they've won the Carabao Cup, do we think that they are going to go for the FA Cup and the Champions League? Because I think Pep Guardiola, to kind of see him as a success for Manchester City and kind of see Manchester City as a successful club in world football, they've got to win a Champions League now. Because if they don't win one now in the next few years, it's going to be a while till they do. So do you think that Manchester City should actually focus on the Champions League rather than go for the title?
Again, I'm going to say it, both. The difference is although I think Chelsea will go for the title, I think City are going to win the title. I think they've got incredible quality in every position, in depth, and you've got some world-class ones in there, De Bruyne, Aguero. I've got a controversial opinion. Ederson is the greatest goalkeeper in the whole of Europe. I think he's incredible with his feet. His distribution is second to none. He can stop any shot. He's great. I think Ederson is incredible, and they've got a really strong defence. Otamendi has really improved from a couple of years ago. Full-backs, they've got those in depth. I really rate Benjamin Mendy despite his terrible performance against Spurs the other night. And I think they're starting to become established. I don't want to say they're going to dominate English football, but they've definitely got the team to do it. But Champions League, they've got to win it this year for me. They've invested heavily into... There is no club other than maybe PSG who has invested this heavily into their squad in this last year or so. And I think they really should be going on to win that with the team they've got, don't you?
What worries me is the depth Manchester City have got. You see, you think too much, but I think too much in certain areas. I don't think it's balanced. If you look at, obviously, in terms of centre-backs, they've got Vincent Kompany, who's been there for years. He's an absolute club stalwart. He's an absolute legend of the club. Official captain. But in terms of centre-back partnershiping, do you think that Laporte and Stones is the best partnership they've got? Or Laporte and Otamendi, or Stones and Otamendi, or Kompany and Laporte, they've got so many combinations they can play. That's the only thing that I think... is Company really as good as he's obviously not going to be as good as he was a few years ago when City won the title, beating Manchester United on the last day to it, beating QPR. Yeah. Is Vincent Company really the kind of? I'll tell you what. Here's a good example. Gary Cahill at Chelsea. A couple of seasons ago, when they won the title with Antonio Conte, he was absolutely outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. The way that he adapted to Conte's three at the back was brilliant, and he kind of showed that he was a quality player. But now you look at him slipping against Derby the other night, a poor misplaced pass, kind of lack of concentration, rusty, not getting played very often. Do you think that's going to happen to Vincent Company? Do we think that Vincent Company is now just kind of sit there and mentor players rather than have a big role to play? I mean, yeah, he might play in the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, brilliant. But if you're going to go for a Champions League and you're going to go for a title like the Premier League, you've got to have players who, even if they're left in the reserves, are going to come in and be absolute world class. Has Vincent Company lost his world class touch?
Yeah, he has. He's not world class anymore, but he's still very good, in my opinion.
Good enough to win a title.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Company is going to be incredibly vital to winning the title this year. Lovely little rhyme for you there. I think Laporte, Otamendi and Stones are, for me, the ones that Guardiola's going to use the most. You've seen Laporte has made a real kind of statement in the team. You know, he's starting to come in a lot more regularly. He's playing quite well also, may I add. And I think that Laporte and Otamendi is probably the best combination. But Stones, you know, he's still making his mistakes, isn't he, Stones? But I think that, you know, he is starting to improve. And over the seasons, they're doing good. I think Company is still important, but not vital. That's my take on that.
Liverpool, then. We've talked enough about Chelsea. We've talked enough about City. The team that hasn't won the title or the Premier League at all since it was introduced. Have Liverpool, is this season the time for Liverpool to finally go for the title, get rid of that inconsistency against the lower teams that we've seen in the past, and kind of use the distraction of the Europa League and Champions League of Chelsea and City respectively? Do they now say, right, we got to the final of the Champions League last season, brilliant, loved it, great run, fans loved it, chanting, great run, didn't work out against Real Madrid. Do they now say, let's go for a domestic cup like the FA Cup, let's go for the league? Let's really kind of knuckle down that consistency. Does Klopp now think to himself, where do I take Liverpool? Because he's tried to take them to the Champions League, it didn't work. He's tried to take them to the FA Cup, didn't work. He tried to take them to the Carabao Cup. And does he now think, like he did with Dortmund, he had the season where he thought, let's go for the title. Let's really go for Bayern Munich, and they won the Bundesliga. Does Klopp now do that with Liverpool?
Yeah, he does that now. This is
It's the perfect moment.
Yeah, as I've already said, I think Chelsea and City will go for the title, but again, I think all three of these teams are probably going to really go for it this season. And Liverpool, with Klopp, it's probably the best time for them to attempt to do it. And that is because the fans really want the Premier League, don't they? Yeah. We know that's the competition the fans really want to win. I'm sure they prefer that to the Champions League even. I think that they've definitely improved a lot from last season. They've got Alisson in goal from Roma, and yeah, sometimes you just push it out a little bit. He goes a little bit too far with these skills that he does, as we saw. But you know, he's a great shot stopper, and then they've strengthened their midfield a little bit with Keita. I quite rate him. You know, I don't think he's been revolutionary or anything, but I think he's an improvement. And Van Dijk now, he's in his second season with Liverpool? Yeah, second season with Liverpool, and he's starting to really, you know, fill the boots. He's starting to play his role really well, and he's really changed them defensively, I think.
Obviously, Salah had such a large play to play last season, such a large part to play. And the kind of the front three of Mane, Firmino, the role that Firmino plays within Liverpool, and Salah. And obviously, Salah's got unfair criticism over the past couple of months for not scoring, or for not doing this, for not doing that. But if you look, he scored 50 goals in 65 games. I think the stat was the other week. 50 goals in 65 games. Incredible stat for a player to score that many goals in that few games. He shouldn't be criticised. He's been one of the best additions Liverpool have bought. And I think now, when you look at buying Shaqiri, what he's done is strengthen the bench. And what we saw in the Champions League last season is that when they were down, losing to Real Madrid after Karius' first error, shall we say, they had no one to bring off the bench. When Salah got injured, they had no one to bring off the bench. And I think what they've done in buying Shaqiri is that Shaqiri might not have been the most consistent player in the Premier League when he was at Stoke, but on his day, and when he comes off the bench, he's a proper impact player.
I think he is definitely a catalyst. He comes and he makes things happen. He comes and he scores out of nothing. We've seen the wonder goal Shaqiri can score for Stoke, and he's doing it for Liverpool already. He scored his first goal the other day. Very impressive. And, you know, the thing is Liverpool, talking about their title chances, when you talk about the mentality around the club, I'm not entirely sure that it's perfect for them to go on and win the title. You know, they've always fallen that bit short. For example, in the season where, you know, they were a few points clear, they're looking like they were going to do it, but then they slipped at the last second, quite literally, with Steven Gerrard. I think that I'm not going to rule out the fact that they could win the title as I've put them in, you know, the top three. My question I want to ask back to you. Thinking about Spanish players. Is, do you think the fact that, you know, they've had seasons where they've fallen short and they haven't won the Premier League yet and they don't have that experience in recent years, do you think that's going to be an issue? Do you think that that's going to mean that teams like possibly City, who have that winning experience in recent years, are going to have the composure to finish off in first place rather than them?
I don't think it's going to haunt them. No, I think it's a different manager to Brendan Rodgers, and I think the whole philosophy that Klopp's installed at the club is that it's. I know kind of Brendan Rodgers was very kind of the importance of family within kind of the Liverpool team and making sure everybody was, you know, was close and kind of off the pitch as much as they were on. I think Klopp is kind of the big friendly giant kind of figure. It's the whole kind of dressing room, this big friendly German. He's not one to mess with, but when things go right, he's your best friend. And I think his whole kind of passion on the sideline really rubs off on the pitch. And I think when it's like a cold Tuesday night at Anfield or away from home, and you see Klopp going mental on the sideline, either at a mistake or going mental because you've done something brilliant, you've had a shot. That's what I want to see if I was a player from a manager. I want to see the passion, because I think that passion rubs off on me. Because I think if the manager cares, I want to care. I want to play for this club. I want to make sure that I get that manager's respect. And so I think it's different to past years. And I don't think it is going to haunt them. I think that give Liverpool a chance. Give them the chance to work on that inconsistency that we've seen against the smaller teams, and they are going to be very hard to beat this season.
Yeah, I mean, fair point. So, I'm going to go City to go on and finish the business.
City?
Who are you? I think I got it.
City. Nah, it's not City. It's going to be Liverpool.
Oh, okay.
But I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to come down to the last 3 games. I think it's going to be no more than 3 points in it. And I think it could even be decided on goal difference. Or, you know, goal score. It's going to be close, because these are the best 2 teams English football has had since Manchester United were at the top of their game with Alex Ferguson, and Chelsea were right behind them with Mourinho. The whole front 3, the problem for Liverpool was that their defence was dire. Obviously, Van Dijk had only just come in. Lovren was awful, but Lovren had a great summer with Croatia. Van Dijk's toned himself as a player, and he's very much a brick wall now. And City, obviously, Stones is getting better as much as he's taken the mistakes out of his game. And obviously, Laporte's adapted better to the Premier League now. It's going to be close, but I think Liverpool will nick it. Chelsea, I think, should. It's my opinion that Chelsea should focus on the Europa League, because it not only gets them into the Champions League, but it wins them a trophy. It gives them success in Europe. It gives them a chance, you know, to go into the Super Cup, as stupid and pathetic as pointless as that competition is, it gives them a chance to test themselves against the winners of the Champions League. And I think the UEFA Europa League opens much more doors to Chelsea than it does just finishing third in the Premier League, because I don't think they're good enough to win the title. I think they should they should go for the title next season. A year after, a year under Sarri, a chance to go for the Premier League, kind of kick on, and I think it's Guardiola has to go for the Champions League. He's won the Premier League. He's proved himself in the Premier League. The only thing he's left to win in England is the FA Cup and the Champions League in Europe. He has to go for that. He has to go for both of those competitions, and then I think when he's won the Champions League, you can call him a success, because at the minute he's no better than Pellegrini. He's no better than Pellegrini. Pellegrini won the League Cup. Pellegrini won the Premier League. Pellegrini won the FA Cup. Guardiola's got to prove himself within Europe now.
No Bournemouth or Watford then, Jack, for your Premier League.
Bournemouth, we said Bournemouth, if they can even get UEFA Europa League qualified, I think that's going to be I think it's to make people faint, to be honest. So, yeah, Liverpool for the Premier League, Manchester City for second, Chelsea for third. What, you roughly the same?
Yeah. I think I agree. I think it could even come down to something like goal difference. I think all three are well in it. Obviously, it's very early days again. We don't know if any of those teams could drop off potentially, but I would say probably City, Liverpool, Chelsea for that one. Yeah.
So let's get into predictions for this weekend's games. There are a full 10 fixtures this weekend, spread across Saturday, Sunday and Monday. So let's kick them off with Bournemouth versus Manchester United. Obviously, we've talked about Bournemouth. We haven't really touched on Manchester United. We'll have to touch on that next week. If you want us to talk about Manchester United next week, obviously you can email thefootballnatter@gmail.com. And we'll make sure to include any points you may have. But let's kick off the predictions. So I'll say my prediction, you can say yours, and we'll move on to the next one. So Bournemouth, Manchester United, I'm going to go for 2-2. You?
You know what? I'm going for 2-1 to Bournemouth. You've convinced me. I think that they're definitely in good form, and if Wilson goes out there and gets firing, possibly Brooks could pop up with a cheeky goal. You never know. I think Man United are not good. Their style of play is not promising, and a lot of people are bashing them, but almost deservedly so. I don't know if they've got the quality to actually, keep up the fight for maybe even a top 5 kind of position. And I think Bournemouth, in their good form, they're not scared. They're going to go out there. They're going to really go for it, and they've got a good chance against this team.
So Cardiff-Leicester. Obviously, Leicester's had the awful tragedy with the helicopter crash, and I think actually that's going to spur them on. They're going to go out there and they're going to want to play for the chairman. And so I've put the Cardiff-Leicester score at Cardiff 1, Leicester 3.
So obviously that was a terrible thing that happened to them, and unfortunately we don't know how the players are going to react, on the field to that tragedy. And I think they'll go out. I think they'll definitely go out with the intention of trying to get the win. It's Cardiff, as we spoke earlier, we don't really rate their chances so highly, but they are in some decent form. So I'll say it's a 2-2 draw, this one, but it could go any way. I'd like to see Leicester go on and win that game. It would be very nice for them.
Moving on to Everton-Brighton. Now Everton obviously in good form under Marco Silva. Brighton as well under Chris Hughton. I'm going to go in favour of Everton. They are at Goodison Park. I'm going to go for Everton 2, Brighton 1.
Yeah. Everton, they are doing well. I really like Marco Silva. We've spoken a lot about managers, especially the younger managers this episode. I think Marco Silva is another one of those. He did really well when he went to Hull. And I think he's brought his style with him. He's got Richarlison and Sigurdsson who can score out of nothing. And Brighton are looking good. They're looking strong. But I think Everton are that bit too much. So 3-1 for Everton for me.
Now, Newcastle, Watford, two teams which, of course, we've talked about tonight. And I think Watford are going to absolutely thrash them. It's going to be, obviously, St James's Park. Geordie fans, they're as passionate as ever, but they really are down in the dumps at the minute. It's going to be Newcastle 0, Watford 3 for me.
Yep, I agree. I do not think Newcastle are going to play well. I think that defensively they're going to be broken down by the likes of possibly a Roberto Pereira, or I don't know if they're going to play Andre Gray, but his pace to get him behind that kind of sluggish defence. I'll say 2-0 to Watford. Their form continues.
West Ham, Burnley, probably the most boring fixture of the whole weekend.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be 1-1. I might go 1-1. They might nick a goal. Arnautovic is in kind of good form. Burnley obviously got Sam Vokes and Ashley Barnes, who somehow they look like League One strikers, but somehow they score regularly in the Premier League. So I'm going to go for West Ham 1, Burnley 1.
Yeah, really boring game, honestly. Burnley are doing nothing special this season. Obviously, they had a great one last season, which showed anything can happen. Shame they didn't really qualify for that, but, Olympiacos, that is a big ask for them in their qualifiers. So, back to reality in the Premier League. I don't think they're doing anything special, but I don't think they're in trouble. 0-0 for me. Really boring game.
Arsenal, Liverpool. Now, Arsenal, obviously, 11 wins in a row until the other night. Liverpool, obviously, brilliant form. I've said they're going to win the Premier League. See, for me, if you look at a couple of seasons ago with Arsene Wenger when Liverpool came on the open day and absolutely tore them apart. Obviously, it's different managers and Emre's come in and done a really, really good job. But I still think Arsenal are going to lose this one. And this might be the start of a little bit of inconsistency. It's really going to test Emery, I think, these next few games going into December. But I think it's going to be Arsenal 1, Liverpool 3.
Wow, 1-3. Yeah, I mean, Arsenal have really improved since they lost those opening games to Chelsea and Man City, of course, big tests. And their latest draw with Crystal Palace, I thought, it didn't surprise me almost because Crystal Palace had been in pretty bad form and it was time for them to bounce back and, it provided that chance for them. Milivojevic in mad form, obviously, tearing up at that CDM spot. But for me, it's going to be a draw, this one. I'm saying 2-2. I think both have good in-form attacking players. I wouldn't be surprised to see, Lacazette and Aubameyang getting on the score sheet again. They're in good form, unfortunately. But yeah, we'll just see where that one goes. I think Emery might be facing a test after that if he gets 2 consecutive draws. But, it is Liverpool, and you've got to wait and see what happens.
So Wolves Tottenham. This is an interesting one because obviously Nuno Espirito Santo has been so brilliant and Wolves have adapted so well to the Premier League. And Tottenham, obviously, we know that Tottenham can be very inconsistent against lower teams and mid-table teams. So I'm going to go for 2-2 here. I think Cavallero coming in the other day, coming off the bench and scoring almost his first touch. Adama Traore, obviously, he wasn't very good with the first time in the Premier League, but he's kind of adapted and kind of developed in the Championship. He's come back and he's really come back strong. So I'm going for 2-2 for that one.
So yeah, Wolves are another one I'd be interested to talk about. You know what it is, footballnatter@gmail.com. So if you want us to talk about them, go ahead. But I agree, they've got some talent. Problem is with Wolves, I think, is that they haven't been as impressive as I expected up front, despite their clear quality in wingers. They got Adama Traore, Cavallero, Helder Costa, Jota, all of those good players. But it's really, Moutinho and Neves in that midfield who I think really can dictate the pace of a game. And I think Tottenham struggling a little bit. They haven't been playing well for a while despite getting a good string of wins. Maybe Moussa Sissoko can play like the best player to ever step foot on a pitch and win the game, But no, I'll stick with 1-1 in this one.
City Southampton now. We've spoken another two teams we've spoken both about tonight. Now this is the kind of game for me which City absolutely just come out and bomb them. It's City 4, Southampton 1. I don't think they stand a chance at all. At all. I mean, at the start of the season, City obviously were a little bit inconsistent against Newcastle in terms of the game itself. But I think City are gonna absolutely. It's gonna be an absolute romping at the Etihad.
Obviously, we'd love to see almost a Renaissance Southampton come out and defeat the likes of City. It's not going to happen. I agree. This is the kind of game where they will come and step up and smack the opposition. You know, I don't make these kind of predictions often. I did do last season with Man City versus Swansea, where they beat them, I think, 5-0, and I got that one right. So I'm going to go with 5-0 again, Man City 5, Southampton 0. Why not?
That's demoralising for Southampton fans. Chelsea Palace, London derby. It's going to be an interesting matchup because obviously Zaha really did well against Arsenal. He had a lot of freedom and he really kind of went at Arsenal and that really troubled them. And I think Zaha is obviously the biggest threat Palace have had, and they've done so well to be able to keep him. But I still don't think it's going to be enough. And I'm going to say Chelsea 3, Palace 1.
Yeah, Zaha is incredible. I watched the game against Arsenal the other day, and I thought, he's such a threat. Straight from the get-go, he was tearing it up on the wing, cutting inside. He is a brilliant player. And they've got quality. Palace have quality. I was speaking about this the other day. They have the players. It's just whether they gel together enough. And I think that it's a massive test for Palace. Obviously, they did beat them. You know, I think it was last season Palace beat Chelsea. Maybe the season before that, and that was quite impressive. But, you know, I think Chelsea have got that flair. They've got the individual brilliance of Hazard. I think he'll be coming back from his injury. So I'm going to have to go with a really slight but 1-0 win for Chelsea.
And now, quite frankly, the worst Monday night football game you will ever have in the Premier League. Huddersfield Fulham, the two top scoring teams in the Premier League. Is 0-0? Is it going to be anything other than 0-0?
Yes, I think it will be, unbelievably. Fulham aren't necessarily struggling for goals so much. They're scoring, they're losing though. You know, they lost 4-2 to Cardiff, which I didn't think was possible. I didn't know Cardiff could possibly score 4. However, you know, I spoke about it earlier. I said Huddersfield, they are getting the possession together. It's just whether they can do something with it. And this is the perfect opportunity for me. I don't know who's going to score it. I really don't know. Let's go with the goalkeeper, Loersel, to score a 90 plus 7 minute winner, 1-0 to Huddersfield Town.
I think we'll end it there. Thank you, Harry, for coming on this week. Yeah, you might well be joining us next week.
Yep.
So let us know what you thought of this week's podcast, the first episode of the Football Natter. If you've got any comments or any suggestions as what you'd like us to talk about, feel free to email thefootballnatter@gmail.com. So once again, thank you to Harry. Thank you to you, of course, for listening. Make sure you join us next Saturday for episode 2 of the Football Natter.